Thank you everybody for coming to our data science seminar. For us, the data science seminars have been running for 7.5 years, since 2016, and the event is 35th in this series. My name is Jaak Vilo, and I invited this today's seminar. I'm head of the data science here at the Institute and was previously 12 years for head of the Institute, but now head of the data science and head of the, or in the health data research group. So this is our domain. I looked back at the history and I said 7.5 years we have been running the series on different topics, data and AI, autonomous driving, IoT, anything, right? The third event that we back then held in Babel was also about health data, and that's exactly 7 years ago. Meanwhile, we had some seminars on COVID data. We had some secure data processing, secure data analytics, including the health data. But now the health data secondary use, and it seems that the topic is timely. Thank you everybody for coming. It seems that for some people it might be even the very first time to visit Tartu Delta Center. Please raise hands who is first time in this building. Thank you for coming, and we have plenty of time to look around in here as well. Just a couple of days ago, European Parliament and Commission also agreed on political level on European health data space. We probably will not go too much into that EHDS topic, but before we go to the seminar, so some of you may, some may not know about what is the difference between primary use of health data and what is the secondary use of health data. So primary use is when you go to doctor and they treat you, or they look at previous information about you, and the aim is helping you in person. Secondary use of health data is for the other uses, for research purpose, overall generation of information, and developing better care options, quality assurance, all these other topics. So we will focus on this secondary use of data. Often we hear, and you probably have heard many times, that data is new oil. And this I have heard also before, that actually this is not true. It's nothing like oil. Think about oil. You burn it, it disappears and pollutes everything, right? Data is different. We need to use data, we need to reuse data, reuse, and the more we use the same data, the higher the quality, the higher the value, the more value we get from the data. Data does not disappear like oil. So that's why it's different. And in general, I think we are just in the early days of health data use, large-scale use, because for how long we have had electronic data available to us? For 15, 20 years, perhaps in Estonia. Depends on the country, what data has been collected. So we are in the early phases of getting the lifelong information about human health. So today, without further ado, I would like to go to the seminar. We have invited here from the government or state side, from the ministry, the strategic vision. Jaanika Merilo will talk about that. We know that we want to help companies. Government has set up the applied research center in the Metrosert, so we hear from Metrosert. Of course, we have our own researchers. Raivo Kolde will talk about what we have been doing on reusing of the health data. Then we have a break. You see the tables are filled. And after the break, we will get the international view for health data in Europe and worldwide by Peter Rijnbeek from Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam. And then we conclude by University Clinic the oncology center take on the hospital side. After which we will have panel and we can have further questions. Every presenter has about 20 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes questions. So personal questions maybe immediately, but we still have the panel where we can discuss later. And with this introduction, I would like to ask Jaanika to please come on stage. I do not like to tell the long CVs and histories and all the accomplishments that you may have had, but of course you are free to tell about that yourself. And yes, please, Jaanika.
Yes,
Head of the eHealth strategy in the Ministry of Social Affairs. Please.
Yes, thank you, Jaak. It's absolutely amazing to see so many people. We were like expecting to have this nice, cozy workshop, brainstorming, but it's huge and nice. So thank you for coming, everyone, really. So actually, I would still talk a little about EHDS, about European Health Data Space, because our vision will be very much focused on our opportunities and limitations as well. And they come, unfortunately, from Europe, and then basically how we can find the best ways to still drive the innovation while having some legislation. So who has heard about European Health Data Space, EHDS? Okay, half, that's good enough. So I hope I will tell another half. Why is it important? So currently Europe is working on, actually for the last two years has been working on legislation on developing the health data space, which is supposed to regulate basically everything that we do with data, with primary data, with secondary data, how we use it, how we reuse it, how we treat it, how we store it, and so on. And actually yesterday we received the final version of the EHDS draft. Everyone was like, yoo-hoo, done, because it was 2 years, it was extreme negotiations. You cannot imagine how tough it was, because it was like different countries have different levels of readiness. Someone doesn't have yet even a central e-health record or electronic system. Someone has it all and has secondary data, secure processing environments, so try to find a compromise between so many different countries. Well, we did it. We started from wanting everything, basically, as Estonia always does, in a good way. We ended up with a very small compromise in regards to secondary data, unfortunately. So this vision that I will be talking about is very much what Estonia is doing already, and it will be very much correlating with European vision and legislation as well. So there won't be any like huge surprises, not in a good, not in a bad way. But why is it important is basically that European directive overrides local legislation in the, let's say, where it is supposed to regulate something that national government doesn't do, or where unification is needed, basically harmonization with Europe, with other countries, in order to provide the really one single space for data. And this EHDS basically regulates how people have access and control their own data, as well as create the single market for electronic health records, meaning that, for example, different e-health solutions, also like software solutions that are created in Estonia, how they could be exported also to other countries, and how they would be corresponding to legislation of other countries, meaning really creating a single market for the data as well as for different products in regards to healthcare. As well as, of course, use of secondary data. It's very important. We will get to that. And we need data also for cross-border exchange. And actually, Estonia has been leader in exchanging the e-prescriptions and patient summary cross-border, meaning that we have been exchanging data with 11 countries. We recently launched the exchange with Latvia, which is a huge achievement, and we were the first ones to launch the e-prescription cross-border exchange with Finland in 2019. So in regards to if we have data, we can do all the wonderful things with it. Use it for primary use, secondary use, cross-border use, for whatever. But the slides are a bit lagging. Okay, so basically EHDS regulates and says that all the systems that process health data will be qualified as EHRs, or electronic health record systems. which means basically that they would have to apply to certain rules. The rules are interoperability, that they exchange the data with our central system and exchange in compatible format and in predefined format, as well as it has to comply with security requirements, NIS2. So this is important because then we get data. Then we get, by interoperability, the standardized data for primary use that we can later share for secondary use. As long as we have data and in single format, we can do, again, in a good way, whatever we need with it, like the scientific research, pharmacogenomics, genetics, whatever is needed. Then the EHRs have to confirm that they are corresponding to the interoperability and the security. And as well, we have a chance to regulate or not regulate the wellness applications. So we have so many applications that are not like using health data as primary aim or goal, but for example, the wearables and so on, they're wellness, they're not healthcare. So should we standardize, should we create some quality certification, but as long as they're interoperable with our electronic record, they have to also comply with certain standard requirements. Again, why I'm saying, because it's important that we have data in a unified, standardized, clean, and reusable form. So this creates this framework also to have as much data as possible. Because when I say data, it could mean anything and everything. But EHDS has also defined what data is priority data, meaning what is the most important for the primary use as well as the secondary use. And there is a certain list of different data sets that should be available first for the primary and also like cross-border. And my slide is lagging pretty much. This blah blah is because I'm trying to change my slide. Anyways, so there is a predefined list of data sets and what should be available and in what time. Meaning that we will have approximately 2 to 7 years, actually 6 now, to make all the data sets available that are predefined. That means basically all the main health information, starting from the allergies, vaccinations. We have most of them in our central electronic system already. Some of them we don't, we're working on it, like the pregnancy record, like the patient care plan and so on. But we're doing quite well in regards to we are following the timeline and the list also predefined by Europe. And it is predefined by Europe because for Europe, it is very important also to have this cross-border exchange. Then we can, like, for example, when an Estonian patient is traveling to Latvia, then the doctor can see the patient summary, can see the information. So it's not only about secondary data, it's about interoperability, not only in country, but also outside the country. And as a next step, outside of EU, like also connecting the third countries to this one single big market, big data market in a good way. And then we have predefined, of course, different data categories that should be available for secondary data. And it is, again, important because we will be going by this list and making this data available also for secondary use. For example, when we have a timeline that medical images should be available, lab results should be available, we will be prioritizing them also, meaning that to have it centralized, to have it in the same format, to make it available for primary, then secondary, then cross-border. And you can already see by this list also what categories would be available then for secondary use. Because we have huge amount of data. It's unstructured quite often. It's like in a text format very often. We have data accumulated from 2007 basically, but it's a huge pile of just any data, and we need to prioritize how we clean it up and what data sets will be like available with high quality and for secondary use. So there are certain categories, again, for secondary use, which are wider than just health data. They include also different statistics, sociology, social behavior, genomic data, genetic data, and very, very big list of all the data sets, which is not available by my clicker. And so again, it is not that we will not be making all the data available which we have certain priority in making it structured and high quality. And here you can see the list which should be available also for good and high quality reuse of data in next 4 to 6 years. But again, 4 to 6 years means basically that it is a European timeline. We want to be faster. Always we want to be faster. We don't want to wait for 6 years so that these data sets would be available. It means, for example, then when it's said that medical images should be available for secondary or primary use, that means basically that Europe is also financing this data quality or this making it available, which means basically that Europe has tranched its support financing also with this timeline. Let's say, if the medical images should be available in 2 years, that means that the EU financing will support making them available. Then hospital discharge reports, okay, here is EU financing to make it available. So we can always do faster if we have the resources, but we understand that the resources are limited and should prioritize certain data categories, certain uses, and this is where it's extremely important to also have the feedback that what data categories are needed, because out of all these thousands of categories, you need to prioritize what is needed besides the legislation, what is mostly in demand for research, for secondary use, and they are, of course, also prioritized besides the legislation. But now is the tricky part. It all needs an infrastructure. And this is a very primitive, actually, scheme or picture about the infrastructure. So basically how we see it in few years is that all the electronic health records, or basically the IT systems that use health data, have to provide in standardized format the data for centralized system. Again, very many systems already provide this information. They have interoperability. Patient summary, for example, is compiled out of many data sources and many different systems into one summary. It's all good. But as I mentioned, there are certain data categories that are not yet available, like allergies, the pregnancy records, the patient care plans, and so on. So all this data should be available for primary use, and when it's available for primary use, it's also available for secondary use, because as we have data, we can share the data. And it is, of course, also available for cross-border use. So basically, in a few years, let's see how fast, we will have also conformity assessments that the EHRs will say that, yes, I'm interoperable with central system, I'm providing all the data that I have, and we very much hope, Liisa, sorry, but we hope for Metrosert to help us on that, because we need someone to say that, yes, these systems correspond to interoperability and EHRs are corresponding to self-assessment, but even more so that the EHRs are also corresponding to or can faster apply to medical device certification, which is extremely important. So there are like bits and pieces that need to be installed and decided yet. They haven't been decided yet. And again, it is important because as soon as we have this data available, they will be made available through the secure processing environment. And according to EHDS, we had to create secure processing environments. Basically, they could be multiple, where the data is stored and can be processed. Which means that in the future, again, I cannot say if it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it needs kind of significant financing for that as well, not only political will or decision-making. The data will be available in the environments, which means that it is not sent out as data, for example, pseudonymized, anonymized data, that here you have data. No, you will have an access to secure processing environment where you can model the data, use the data, analyze the data, do whatever is needed for a purpose. So the future brings basically these secure processing environments. The data that will be standardized and as much data sets as possible and prioritized according to legislation and demand from the market. Again, needed input, what data sets are most needed. And as well, we have in place some, let's say, procedures to enable faster certification for healthcare systems as well as medical devices and so on. So let's say we see secondary data as a very, very important part of our future, because I don't know if data is oil or not oil, but we do see it as a vital and crucial part of our eHealth strategy, meaning that we see it bringing huge value, not only to Estonia, not only to researchers, but actually we cannot provide like the high quality personalized services if we don't make data available. 5 minutes, great. I don't even need 5, thank you. I will have then a few minutes for questions also. So, underlining, it's hugely important for us also to make this data available, to make it available as fast as possible, as securely as possible, by creating the tools for that, by actually removing the bottlenecks that might be in the way, and to do it all in accordance to European vision so that it could be pulled together with other countries, it could be exchanged cross-border, and so on. But I would love to answer your questions as I have 5 minutes. Thank you. Thanks.
Now we have 10 minutes for questions. Where do we have the microphones? Can you bring one down? And you wanted to ask something? No? Oh, from here. Sorry.
Thank you a lot for your presentation. As a lawyer, I'm interested in lots of things, but I will ask one question. It's about the Estonian biobank. How does this new regulation impact the usage of Estonian biobank? And you probably know the latest version of the regulation, then how the national consent requirement is now treated in the new regulation.
I'm afraid actually Riley would love to answer that because she has been working with it.
Yes, thank you. I'm from the Ministry of Social Affairs as well. And it needs further analysis to say how does it affect, because now we have from the European Parliament the latest version of text, but it's not adopted yet. We hope that we have some clarity on that on the 11th of April, but today it is too soon to say. But as Estonia had national legislation already before, as Human Genome Research Act, and Estonian Biobank's activities on secondary use is based on that very much. So we hope we don't have to change too much. So that is our initial assessment.
Yes, I think actually a little bit that it is a very kind of twisted thing that basically we have the framework in place in regards to EHDS, but we have 2 years to analyze how it should be adopted into, how it should be actually translated into practices and then adapted to Estonian legislation, which means basically that some formulations are very like rounded, or you can interpret it in different ways. So we also came together with our different lawyers from ministries and tried to analyze in secondary data opt-out in certain cases, if. So what do these ifs mean in practice? So now that we have this act in place, we have basically 1 to 2 years to analyze how it should be adopted. And this is answer also that during this year will be analyzed how it should be interpreted by our legislation. So unfortunately, it is just a framework. Now we'll be regulating acts that will help to interpret it. We would love to have the details also, but we don't. Thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I'm happy
Anders.
already. Anders is...
Thank you for, it was a great presentation. Just wondered if you could comment. So one thing I don't see on this slide is where does ethical approval fit in? Can you comment on the procedures that's going to be under this here?
Yes. Yeah, Riley is nodding.
Yes, the data application management will also include the ethical assessment.
Nothing will
next
change
question
in
here.
regards to that.
Yes. Hello. So I have a bit of practical question here about the secure processing environments. Is there any restriction whether it can be cloud-based environment or it should be some sort of isolated environment like?
Brilliant question. We're working on it. We would love it to be cloud-based, actually, to say it as meaning that based on purpose and whether it best way fulfills the expectation, but we would like to see when it makes sense that we still use clouds. And actually we have maybe it's a bit secret between us, but we have also feedback from Ministry of Economic Affairs that they would be also happy to support us in the way that when clouds are needed, use the best way, dedicated clouds, secure processing. They might be clouds, but Christian probably, no? Christian is TEHIK, which means our IT arm, who also loves clouds. So.
In here, Peter, Patrick. Peter.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Peter Padrik, oncologist, and thank you very much for this overview. You started from European data room, but we have also Estonian data room. So did I understand correctly that actually the secondary data use of Estonian health data is very much connected with European developments?
Yes.
But at the same time, we should think what kind of data, health data we can use for secondary use in Estonia just now. Could you somehow describe how and what kind of secondary health data could be possible to use in Estonia already now?
Yes, thank you. So all the data sets that are available now will be available, which means that currently we have basically thousands of different labels of data. And we are giving out data, purpose-based, basically tens of times in a year. So that means that the secondary data is already in use and certain categories are available. For example, information that we have in central EHR, they're already available for secondary use as well. So this continues until we have this new framework and environment, but it is rather about what additional data sets are needed for secondary use and how we prioritize making the additional data sets available. Because the data sets we already have, all good with that, like the patient summary, the main information about the, diseases, prescriptions and so on, it's already reusable in certain format for certain purpose. But as we have like so many data sets, the Europe rather says that, okay, the complete list, the minimum list that should be available is this. If you don't have these categories, please think about prioritizing them. So all that we have currently will continue to be available. It's just a matter of where we use our resources to make the new sets available.
And I have a second question also, that what was mentioned already, Estonian biobank. So principally for secondary data use, we have quite extensive data source in the form of public Estonian biobank. And do you see that as part of Estonian this eHealth data strategy somehow? And what is the ministry view that currently the secondary data use of Estonian biobank is quite blocked for Estonian health service providers as well as for companies? And how could this be solved for advancing the field in Estonia?
Yes, definitely, it's a huge part of strategy because the data from Estonian Biobank is like vital and crucial for secondary use, and basically, but it's most valuable when it's combined together with all the other data, meaning not only separately the Estonian Biobank data, but combined with patient summary and with all the different data we have in different databases. So we still see it as part of the bigger picture in regards to reuse. For example, if some pharma company, I don't know, maybe good, bad example, needs for research to develop some pharmacogenetic-based drug, then we would, of course, compile all the different data from different data sources, meaning not only biobank, but also we would compile it with like patient summary data and different databases data. So we rather see it as one like bigger picture, that it's part of the data space, definitely, yes. In regards to being blocked, it's Riley again is my second hand because she's dedicated to this biobank and genomic, and all the additional words.
Yes, just as an addition, what Jaanika just said, Estonian Biobank's data is nowadays used for secondary use already. And I wouldn't say it's a small extent or small amount, might nod or not nod, but that will continue definitely. Genomic data for secondary use is one of the last data categories which is prioritized, as it is one of the most difficult data categories to reuse by European Parliament. But we have another project, genomic data infrastructure, what is pan-European project under 1 Million Genome Trust Framework Initiative, and it also prepares for the secondary use of genomic data with phenotypic data as well. So we have a national node which will be prepared by Jaak's team also for the secondary use, and this node will be also hopefully compatible in Estonian Central Health Information System as well. So we have solutions on the way already. Hopefully it won't take for 6 years. Hopefully it will take less, but we'll see.
Okay. Christian, you wanted to comment on the cloud requirement or not? But briefly, very briefly.
Yeah, Kristjan Kolde from TEHIK, Tervise ja Infosüsteemide Keskus. Anyway, in regards to cloud, so I understand where the question is coming from. And the reality is that most data analytics solutions, especially machine learning solutions, they require quite an intensive amount of computing power. But that power is used for a short period of time, and thus building up this infrastructure locally might not be the most cost-efficient solution. Thus, many of those types of solutions are leveraging cloud computing power. There are different levels of using cloud, starting from infrastructure rental to all the way to software as a service, database as a service type of solutions. But we have to take into consideration there's quite a lot of legislation that limits putting that type of sensitive data to public cloud platforms. So it's in the works.
Thank you. I hope that you got part of the answer. So we have more questions and answers coming in the panel. You wanted to comment something?
Yes, the final word actually about you. So basically about the cloud and so on, we're currently starting to analyze the best solution for secure processing environment. We're compiling a work group on the gurus that can advise or also sync with us also on how the secure processing environment will work. And Jaak will get an invite very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. More work. Let's give a big hand. And next, Metrosert has been already mentioned. Liisa Loog is head of the health data on Metrosert.
Oh, well. So hello, everybody. I'm Liisa. Jaanika already mentioned Metrosert. There's Metrosert, as some of you might know it, doing certification of management systems and metrology, lots of other things. But there's a brand new unit, which is what we call the Applied Research Center. It has 5 themes, and health data and secondary use of health data is one of them. And the primary purpose for me, for our unit, is to help our private sector to be better equipped to do innovation. Because as Jaanika mentioned, there's a lot to do, but this is not something that the government or the academia or the private sector can do on their own. We really need to work together, and I hope I'll be able to elaborate on this. But first of all, I'd like to take a step back and talk about what are the challenges. Although I know I'm preaching to the converted here, I don't think I even have to go over them. I'm just going to push it already, hopefully. to talk about them. But overall, these challenges will impact all aspects of our society, from education to economy and obviously national security and ultimately our resilience. So it is of vital importance that we overcome them, and obviously secondary use of health data is not the only means to this end, but it will be one important one. Not a day goes by and we see apocalyptic health-related news. Just I think couple of days ago in the UK, Office of National Statistics says that 1/5 of UK population is economically inactive. So these are adults who do not work. Some of them are students like you, but since this year, the largest group of these economically inactive individuals are people who are inactive due to ill health. And the situation doesn't seem to be looking any brighter in the future. This is the Estonian Health Development Institute, is that how you translate it? That has year after year published worrying statistics about the overweight and obesity in our youth, and Estonia's trend is part of a bigger picture in Europe and globally. So it is quite clear that we need to move away from kind of treatment-based medical system to something that does a better job at prevention. So again, preaching to the converted here, but here are just some of the things that we need to start developing here. There's a big emphasis on the word early and monitoring and personalized everything and efficiency and cost reduction. So this is where we want to get to. And one of the kind of the ways to get into, or the only ways that I actually know of, to get into this comprehensive approach to healthcare is to use data, and not any random data, but real-world health data. So this includes everything from genomic data that we've already talked about today to clinical measurements and also electronic health records. But each one of these kind of data sources is just one part of this picture. This also includes environmental data, occupational factors, lifestyle factors. So when we're talking about research and innovation, we really need to kind of think much bigger than a biobank or a electronic health records. We need to think of an ecosystem that would allow to reuse all of the kind of innovation and investment that has gone into generating data. So this is something that Raivo is definitely going to talk about, but obviously when we are working with data, it can't be. Data is not data, and I agree with Jaak here. Data is not oil. If anything, it's more like wood. But in order to be able to use data, it needs to be of good quality. It needs to be structured, it needs to be clean, and needs to be rich. And this final point is actually the one that I think is most controversial, because I think no one argues with the kind of the first structured and clean, but rich data is what allows us to do this innovation. This is where the kind of the research has been in the last 10 or even 20 years. This is what the machine learning and AI approaches take advantage of. And by rich, we mean that it is, I think like already Jaanika brought out, this is not the fact that we have genomic data or not the fact that we have health records, but it's the fact that we can put these two together. And that means that together they are much more valuable. And this doesn't only kind of apply to the kind of the patient data, it's also metadata. It's about the laboratory equipment. It's about intervals that we take in clinical measurements. It's so many other things. But with the richness comes a bit of a problem, which is patient privacy. And I think this is something that hopefully we're going to discuss more in the panel, but something that Jaanika didn't touch upon is how are we going to guarantee patient privacy, especially in a small population like Estonia. So it is one of the ways to do it is anonymization, right? But as we anonymize, we take away this richness, right? And the reason for this is that normally we talk about pseudonymization. So that means that we essentially remove the kind of obviously identifying information and assuming that this guarantees that people accidentally won't reveal the person's identity. But the problem with pseudonymization is that if we've got enough information about a patient, then common factors allow us to identify the person's identity really quickly, right? So here I've just taken an example from a population that is 1.3 million. So if we know person's sex, we can already reduce it down to less than 700,000. If we know that they've had chickenpox, a really quite common childhood disease, we go down to 8,000. If we know that they've also had acne, 900, asthma, 100, bone fraction in the arm, 10, and if they are also obese, that means that only one person in the entire population of 1.3 million qualifies to this criteria. And obviously, this creates health inequalities as well, because the more health problems you have, the more easily you are identifiable. This also is a gender issue, because as females, we do have, as a result of reproduction, more dealings with the medical system. So how do we, So one of the big questions is how do we balance the privacy with the innovation? The other issue is, or third challenge is, how do we make this innovation that often comes from universities, almost always comes from universities, even if you think about back to the COVID crisis, right, and the solutions, although in the end we got vaccines from pharma companies, all of the underlying research on mRNA had been done in universities, right? But there's still a challenge. How do we make it work in the real world? And one of the the recent paper that came out and said that out of the different clinical prediction models, I think last year was like 400 or something like that, or last 10 years has been over 400 in, I'm so bad at this example because I didn't memorize it, but basically almost none of, very small percentage of the prediction models that are developed in academia reach to the clinic. And this is partly because in success in academia is not the same thing as success in the clinic. And one of the ways to overcome this is, and here's I think one of the poignant example how, in academia we're talking about more bigger data sets, more spatial, more multi-omics. No one is going to give you any brownie points for getting some patient triage system work in Viljandi Central Hospital. So real-world data is really important for this kind of research. And I think this is something that we saw during COVID as well. Countries that were able to quickly adapt to using real-world data were able to not only design their policies, but also very efficiently test vaccine side effects, deal with communication, etc. So real-world data is the basis of this, and I'm really happy that the European Union has recognized this, and hopefully, although this legislation is kind of some ways restricting, it's also putting pressure on countries to get things done. But the other thing is that success in academia is not the same thing as success in the clinic. And I think as someone who's recently transitioned from basic research to applied research, I know that often there's very little incentives to make models, make tools that work in clinical practice. And the reason for this, there's multiple, right? In academia, we want papers. We want lost my train of thought, but basically we want so many things in academia, and none of these things you get from spending years taking your application through the kind of the legislative pipeline that is needed in order to have a certified medical device. Also, especially medical sector, rightly so, are quite conservative settings. So really proving efficacy and safety of a product is a very long journey, both legally and, oh my God, so many, 4 minutes, okay. And one of the things also, there's a cautionary tale of Carl Persson. Many data scientists here know his name. I mean, he's the founding father of statistics, but at the same time, his views supported quite problematic public health policy. And the reason for this is that although Carl was a brilliant statistician, he was not a biologist, and at the time there wasn't that many biologists available for him to consult with. But ultimately, a problem is also that health research needs to be highly interdisciplinary. We need to involve clinicians, we need to involve statisticians, and other data scientists. So the key to this is collaboration, and I'm really happy that Jaanika, you brought up collaboration, because that is also a way to fund these developments. The stakes are not only in the state, it's also businesses, it's also academia. So through collaboration, we can make products that work, are ethical, are equitable, but also we can fund things. So here is one of the things that I think us, over the discussions of last couple of months have been discussing. What is it that it would take to make this system kind of work? And I think Jaanika already showed you kind of from Tehik's side or from your side what it takes. But I think we need to start now adding layers to it, because there are problems that we need to kind of overcome, not only the privacy that I already touched on, but also data ownership. I think from discussions with many of you here in the audience, hospitals are not particularly keen to part with the data, but at the same time, we want rich data. So we need to come up with these practical solutions, and I really hope that we'll be able to do it in a collaborative way that allows innovation, but also prioritizes privacy and safety. And here in Estonia, we have actually a very good basis for it. Although Open Data Institute that published a report in 2021 on secondary use of health data puts Estonia in, I think it's only just in the leader category, but it's quite close to, out of all of the leaders, I think most close to less prepared, limited vision and limited energy. So we've also got a long way to go. But that means that I think, unlike Finland and countries who've been making a lot of progress over the last decade or so, what we have here is all of these brilliant minds in this room, we can come together and design something from scratch. So I'd like to finish with our first president, Lenne-Triin situation. I think here Estonia gets almost lowest points with Latvia on innovation. That the situation is not great. But I think that by working together, we can make a system that will put us on top and faster than most other advanced European economies at the use of secondary use of health data. I'm really looking forward to these discussions.
Thank you. Questions?
Hi, my name is Silja Elunurm and I'm representing private sector, migration. But I have actually a question in regards of EHDS, which is a European health data space. And does Metrosert see itself as a data access body in a sense of EHDS? Thank you.
Very good question. I think this is something that we need to come together and discuss. Metrosert has nothing against being a data access body, but more important than being a data access body is that the system that we create is something that is able to create value for the businesses and something that people will, researchers and businesses will use. So I cannot answer this question at the moment. I think it's a matter of negotiation, but it's not a priority.
I have a follow-up question also that Finland implemented their secondary data usage legislation about 4 years ago without any HDS, basically. They saw it as a strategic this kind of road to go for the country. So there is no HDS in place, and Findata has been basically processing as yesterday was basically a report out, and since their implementation, 1,200 application has been gone through the Findata system. So it basically means that if you have an organization and this kind of strategic vision, organization, and also, how to say, maybe a harmonized processes in place, then big things can happen. And we from the private sector, we really hope that also in Estonia we will go to this point where we actually have this kind of frameworks in place that would actually make things simpler. That was my question, that do you see yourself that this might be the road to go? And maybe Jaanika can also answer to this one.
Yes, no, absolutely. And for the past couple of months, I've been visiting and had lots and lots of chats with different private sector representatives. And this is what I hear over and over again. Having a system like this as early as possible would help to bring lots of clinical research, drug safety, drug efficacy studies into Estonia from abroad. But it would also open up lots of research avenues to our researchers here in this building and across Estonia. So the demand is really, really high. I can confirm, and I think Jaanika wants to add to
Yes,
it.
I wanted to proudly confirm and add that we have been working with FinData really, really well during the past months. We will be engaging them definitely in building our secondary secure processing environments, all the setup for data, whatever the receiving the data applications and building the system overall. So actually Finland is one of our main, let's say, not only role models maybe, but companions in building this ideal solution with Estonian adaptations, of course. So yes, we're learning a lot from Finland and quite actively cooperating almost on a weekly basis. Thanks.
Our natural character is to be a bit faster than Finns, but Peter, please, quick questions.
I wanted to add to this point that absolutely we should work with Finland and Finnish people. They are our closest collaborator, but in some ways they're also our competitor. And I do agree with Jaak here. We want to be a little bit better, especially so especially because talking with research scientists, data scientists in Finland, and even at FinData, they are frustrated because they have the burden of legacy systems, what we do not have. So we actually have an opportunity here to build something faster and better. One example here is that Jaanika said that, I think Finland's system kind of relies on, they have, before even they set up the FinData system, quite well curated databases, right? So at the moment, what they do there is that they manually kind of curate data sets and hand them out, right? This is not a 21st century solution. This is not a 2024 or 2025 or definitely not a future solution. So we can already go prepared into these future challenges.
A very quick question.
Yeah, thank you, Liisa, for such nice overview about your plans. And I understood that you are creating such, as a governmental company, creating infrastructure for research and development, such multi-omics, which is great. My question is, at the same time, another public institution in Estonia, University of Tartu, has founded another company, Estonian multi-omics company, which is also meant to be as a hub for development, for research and development. So are you competing with each other, or are you collaborating with each other, or what are the connections between your planned activities and Estonian multi-omics company?
Very good question. I can emphasize here now that we are not per se creating any infrastructure. This is a call for all of us to come together and create this infrastructure together. We definitely are not competing with any infrastructure that here, Jaak's group or anywhere else, University of Tartu or any others. Our aim is to bring together different sides of the infrastructure and facilities and knowledge with the private sector. So at the moment, because we've only just started a couple of months ago, we don't have any official collaboration with EMC. Actually, I don't know where they are in setting themselves up. Maybe Mait or someone can elaborate on this later. But in the future, I do see that EMC is part of that network that we together with universities, with private sector, with hospitals are creating, and with DEHIC, of course.
Okay, I need to cut in here because we still have the panel, otherwise we have nothing left for panel. Next, please, is Raivo Kolde, Associate Professor in Health Informatics. Please.
So my turn with the slides? Okay. Okay. I don't even have my title. Okay. Secondary. So I'm going to tell you today about the secondary use of health data in Estonia and can we do better? So I'm a very practical person. Like I'm the one who's actually like dealing with health records and like trying to do research on them. And sometimes this can be a really frustrating experience. So I'm really happy that European Union is moving towards the European health data space. But I think that the European health data space is a very generic framework. And the implementation details are those that actually matter. So the picture that Jaanika showed us could be implemented really badly or really, really well for the researchers. And actually it depends on the implementation details if the researchers are actually getting value out of that and the society is getting value out of that. So I'm not going to tell about this slide today because there was a very good introduction already, but in Estonia we have great medical records, but it turns out that using them is pretty hard. And like, I just want to show you some examples from the real world, how this has been organized better, and like maybe these are the examples where we could learn from. And the example I'm going to tell you about is the European Medicines Agency Darwin network. So European Medicines Agency is a regulatory body that is processing marketing authorization of new drugs, providing scientific guidance to the drug companies, what drugs are needed, but also monitoring the risks of existing drugs in the market. And for all of these reasons, they need a lot of evidence to make their decisions. And this Darwin network is their attempt to get quicker and better evidence from the real-world data sources. And it currently includes 20 data partners across Europe. One of them is also us, like we are representing the Estonian Biobank data in there. And I think their biggest achievement thus far is that the studies, international studies on different medical topics that used to take 1 or 2 years for them, now take 2 to 3 months, and they can do so much more research and like have so much more evidence to make their decisions. So that's really important. But I would like to share in this particular presentation some of the ideas that are behind this speed up of research. And these are exactly the implementation details that are important. The first and most important one is the standardization of data. So each Darwin data partner has taken the data to OMOP data model. And what is an OMOP data model? It's basically a database structure that stores patient-level information, but it specifies the location and representation for each piece of medical information. So there are different tables for visits, diagnosis, drugs, measurements, and so on. And it can fit medical data from various sources. So we can put the data from insurance claims, we can put the data from hospital information systems, we can put the e-prescription data there. So it's a nice place to bring together a lot of medical data. And this exercise to take your data to this OMOP data model might not always be easy, but like while doing that, you have to actually do quite a lot of pre-processing and cleaning of the data that you have to do in every study anyway. But since you are doing this process once, you take your data once to this model, then you do this pre-processing once, and in most of the cases, you are good to go with the studies, and you don't have to do this work already anymore when you're doing the study. So that's actually one piece of the speed up. So you can separate the particular study and the data cleaning and processing needed. But the other thing is also standardization of tools and procedures. So while there are like wide variety of scientific questions or like clinical areas where the questions come from in the EMA, then the Darwin focuses on a small number of study types, although they can touch many clinical areas. And they reuse protocol templates for these, which speeds up the ethical application processes. And having standardized data also means that you can have standardized analytic tools. So ideally, you only need to adjust the disease and treatment definitions and get the results right away. But again, if you don't develop the analytic code for every study separately, like it's done commonly right now, but you can separate the tool development from the particular study, you can develop more complex and better tested analytical procedures. You can also have more rigorous data quality checks and more transparent reporting. So actually you get your results faster, but you can also get higher quality results and better tested results. And of course, all of this is nice, but like, what about the privacy and security? So that's the nice thing about this approach is that when you have standardized data and standardized procedures, then you can do this federated analysis. That the coordination center of Darwin that prepares the studies, they only send the R code to the data partners. And the data partners run it on their servers and just send the summary results out. So the patient level data does not leave the data owner. And that's a very good solution because actually the coordination center doesn't need the patient level data that could have identifying information. They just need the results, and this is a way to implement it. And the data partner can decide like what level of security they have for their own data. So in Estonia, the Estonian Biobank data that we use is held in a secure computing environment called SAPU that is developed by the High Performance Computing Center in our building. And it has many good features. So this virtual server does not have any connection to the internet that user can use at least. Every action and screenshot is logged, and the data exchange goes through special object storage environment. That means that we can only take out data that is approved by the data owner, in this case Estonian Biobank, that looks that there is no patient-level data in there, for example, and the data that we take out actually confirms to the ethical approval that we got for this particular study. So we can do the studies quicker in there, we can get higher quality results, and it's also more secure to do it this way. And here I just wanted to visualize the typical time savings that you get, that if you start with a research question, go to the ethical committee, and then start interacting with data owners and getting the data releases, then do the data pre-processing and cleaning with the data that you get, and then you implement the analytics and protocol. This can take you more or less over the year. But if you do this Darwin approach, then you can do the ethics approvals and the protocol and code development already in parallel, and then running the code usually takes less than 1 week. So you can get the results in 2 to 3 months, which is quite a huge improvement, and for the same resources and money you can do 3 or 4 studies that previously went to 1 study. So I think these are the implementation details and ideas that we really should use also in Estonia heavily to make this system work. And yeah, and I wanted to just give you a few examples. We've been working according to these principles already for a few years, and we had this project where we got the representative data set of Estonian health records, we got the DigiLogo records, we got the prescriptions and also the insurance claims, and we showed that by linking it up into a standardized OMOP database allows us to do quite a lot of research for a fraction of effort that it would otherwise take. And there are lots of applications where we can use it. And one, for example, is developing evidence for guidelines. So treatment guidelines are the main way how we can change treatment practice. So if we release a new guideline, then doctors should really follow it and change how they treat the patients. But to develop a guideline, you need evidence. You need evidence how the patients are treated right now, what are the pain points in the treatment right now. But also, when you release a guideline, you would also want to monitor if doctors are really adhering to the guideline. So in all steps of the guideline development and implementation process, you need the real-world information. And here we had a study where we took this data set that we created, and we looked at the cervical cancer prevention guidelines that was released in 2015. And we could see some encouraging signs. For example, I tried this one. So we saw that for teenage girls, previously there was a lot of over-testing with this pap test. And after the release of the new guideline, it really dropped. But at the same time, we saw also some worrying signs. For example, we know that if you get from the pap test, you get this HSIL diagnosis, you should get within 3 months a colposcopy procedure. But we see in the data that actually only 75% of the patients get this procedure and 25% don't. So there is clearly a problem in there. So this is the information that I think would be useful for developing all the different medical guidelines. But to be able to support this en masse, not just with these one-off studies, we really need a linked pre-processed database where the information is coming from different databases. The data is already pre-processed because the timelines for guideline development are short, and it's also representative. We just cannot concentrate on a small number of women, for example, because there are different questions, and different questions need different sets of patients to answer. And yeah, I had another example as well. So we used the same data set and the same information we extracted for the previous study to also show how can we to show what's the prevalence of different human papilloma virus subtypes in Estonia, which is important because this is the major risk factor for cervical cancer. And yes, And the vaccines that are given to young girls now are really subtype specific. So when we want to select the right vaccine for the national prevention program, we really have to know what type of virus is there in Estonia and what are the types of viruses that are causing cancer. And again, this is an example of study that we can do only by combining different data sets. And in here, we relied heavily on the Digilugu Epiccrisis, which is the only place where we can reliably get these test results. But the test results in there are not in a nice format. They are written in the free text often, and it was quite a lot of work just to get this information out. And I think it's important that the hardest part of the study was not actually like writing up the statistical analysis, but just like getting out the information about these test results. But if we do that, then we can get valuable evidence for the health policy. But what are the things that we can do to improve the secondary health data use in Estonia? So from the previous examples, I would say that like the very important thing is to create large research data sets, because we see that the largest speed up in the research comes from acquiring and pre-processing the data before we have the scientific question, not afterwards. And I think Estonian Biobank has been a really good resource for us, because there they are able to do this already. And what should these large research data sets look like? They should be representative. They have to bring data together from multiple sources. They have to be updated regularly, because we are interested in the latest treatments and like what's happening right now. And they have to be pre-processed, standardized, and clean. So, but there are also challenges in there. So one of the main legal challenges is that this is not the way the research is done, because you need to start with a question and then get the data. So according to the European health data space, of course, we can hope that the government will provide us this data set. But now the question comes, as I showed, like that getting the data out of the medical records is also part of the research problem. So we have to figure out a way how we can come over the legal challenges, but still give also the researchers access to the raw data, that we don't rely only like very high-level summaries that don't contain the useful information, but the researchers can access also the raw data to do the research on the medical texts. The other option that I'm proposing is that the standardizing data set is a very useful exercise for all data owners, I feel. And I hope Lenne-Triin will tell more about the experience in university hospital. But like if the data owners, like different hospitals, TAI, Estonian Health Insurance Fund, TEHIK, will standardize their own data, they could get quite a lot of value just by looking at their own data this way, because it gives a better overview of what data do you have. It allows to use the already developed tools to derive operational insights from the data. And it also makes it easier to participate in research without actually giving out the data. And if we have more institutions that have standardized their data, we could also start doing network research, just like in the manner like Darwin does, that we send the code out to different places, we get the results back, and then we put them together. Again, nobody has to give out the data, but it becomes easier to link up with the different data sources, and it becomes easier to collaborate with researchers and public and private sector. Again, keeping the data private within the owners. And of course, part of the solution is also having the standardized tools and procedures for this endeavor. So it's first important to develop the secure computing environments, and I hope that the experience in the University of Tartu will be also taken into account in here. But also it's important to streamline the operations for the most important applications. So the most common applications can be done really quickly, because time is really of essence in many places. And for this we need also better computation algorithms and tools for like visualization, patient trajectories, guideline adherence, health economic analysis, and these are the topics that our group is really working on in here. So my summary is that the current approach to secondary use of the medical data is really stunting research, and incorporating real-world evidence into decision-making. And I see as a solution the standardization of data, protocols, and tools to offer a quicker, more transparent, and more secure way to conduct research. And how to do it in Estonia? We have to create large representative data sets, hopefully build a network of Estonian medical data sources within data owners, and also continue developing standardized tools and processes for common applications. So, thank you. This is the group that does the work in here, and these are the funders that we have.
Yes, thank you. Just to reflect on that from the, I don't know, ministry side probably. So I think Darwin sounds very kind of viable and doable and makes a lot of sense. Absolutely, thank you. We'll be in touch with you about that. In regards to standardization, this is actually what you mentioned also, that we're currently working in this standardization because interoperability means standardization, basically, that you receive the data from different sources by same labels, and it could be identified as the same data set. And this is actually our 2 years plan in regards to implementing the EHDS, meaning that we don't have just the legislation, but we also clean up the data and standardize it. So absolutely appreciate it. Thank you.
I am a huge fan of OMOP, but Raivo, can you answer how difficult it actually to OMOPify data sets in practice? Like how clinicians or other, I don't know, data owners would, how fast they could adapt this OMOPification pipelines and how much training they need, I don't know, tools, things like that?
So I think the answer is that, like, how deep are you willing to go? Like, you can do something, like in, I don't know, a month or two with a few people. But, like, what we learned is that the process never ends because, like, while, like, I think getting the OMOP is, like, part of the process, but the other part of the process is learning about your data, getting more and more information out there, like, cleaning it, and this is a process that never ends. And, like, I think that's a very important part of for the government as well. It's not that, like, we have a 3-month project that we standardize our data and then it ends. It's an ongoing process that needs resources and, like, also help from the researchers and the community to make it really useful.
You can maybe also tell about this part that that when you get data from different places, then it needs to be somehow linked that these talk about the same events. This is the same multiple numbers of visits or facts. So it's not so trivial to link all the data together.
Yeah, but like, yeah, it's doable. Yeah.
But even the indication that it takes months and this continuous process. And the same happens, by the way, in the banks, insurers, everywhere, that you have operational databases and you have data warehouses. So you have to design them, and in the health data, you need to be continuously evolving as well, because the data evolves. Please, Raivo.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to reflect a little on Raivo's presentation, an excellent one, and a little bit opposed to what Liisa said. If I remember correctly, you said we don't have any legacy, but we do. The health information system was launched back in 2008. In IT terms, that's ancient history, and that's what we are working on. That's what we are working with now. So, in the beginning of Raivo's presentations, you had a slide which had a few images on the left-hand corner. They showed an example of medical documents. So I wasn't part of TEHIC back then. I think I was just finished high school when the health information system was launched, and now I'm already quite gray. But as you can see, these are documents. And as far as I understand, these were originally based on paper documents. What happens to a paper if you put it to a computer? Of course, it's not paper in the health information system. It's standardized CDA XML documents. But those solutions were designed for primary use. If a clinician looks at the health data, they won't notice even. I think if you mix up the places where you have to put in the name of the vaccine and the disease against which you're vaccinating, you might not notice it as a person. But when you start to analyze this data in secondary use, and you have to analyze huge amounts of documents, then you'll quite soon understand what's the meaning of what we call it, a doctor's handwriting. So if anyone has seen the doctor's handwriting on paper, it doesn't differ that much in the computer. And that's what we're working on in the secondary use.
But we need to keep working on those because we will not throw those data away. We need to be using and reusing also those data points. Helen.
Actually,
Might.
it is the same, quite the same with the lawyer's handwriting and interpreting EHDS while trying to implement it. So just a quick comment.
Mike.
And in addition to Raivo's presentation, when you showed the application management or process for the application as it could be optimized, there's just one step missing. Next to the ethics committee, there has to be a data access body's permission as well. So that comes from the, yes, 1 month extra.
Hi, great talk. A situation where you have standardized data sets in different locations and the same tool going around analyzing them is of course fabulous, great, but kind of a simple situation. How far are we from getting around the problem where your analysis actually depends on co-looking at different data sets, sampling of haplotypes or whatever, where traditionally you need to combine the data, but of course we understand it's impossible to do it for, let's say we have like 100 times more data than today. Oh, sorry, yeah. Anyway, the question is, how far are we in creating these kind of algorithms or approaches where we can get over this problem where we need to combine data but we can't?
So I think it comes up also when we try to really, when we try to start applying AI models on this data in the federated manner. But I think it opens up like a whole new kind of worms. Like technically it's possible, and like people have shown pilots of this, and this technically can work. But in practice, like when you're learning a model in one place and then you're updating the model in another place and in another place, then it really comes down to legal issues, like how much can you like learn about the patients that you used for updating your model based on these updates that you did. So I think this is a legal question that I haven't seen the solution for yet.
Okay, and the last very brief question, please.
My very brief question. It's either to Raivo or someone from the ministry. It's regarding the data space regulation. Does anybody know, does it also set a standard for the secondary use of data? And is it OMOP or is it something else? So
technical details are missing all. And if, technical details are totally missing at the moment.
But the only thing I want to say is that the Darwin project is also looked at by the European Commission as like a pioneer in this European health data space implementation. So they are looking very carefully into how it's implemented and how it's working. So it's certainly like one of the...
Okay, thank you, Raivo. I wanted to stress that we want to run this event physically in here for networking, but the next speaker visits us over the two-way audiovisual channels. I don't know if Peter sees me. I do not see him yet, but our friend and colleague from Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam. He's head of the health informatics department in there, Professor Peter Rijnbeek. We'll talk about all these fascinating OMOP stories next. Peter, do you hear me?
I can hear you very well, Jaak.
Good. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I'm going to miss the drinks. That's a pity. But I'm very happy to speak to you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Indeed, my name is Peter Rijnbeek. I'm a professor of medical informatics and head of the department, and I'll be talking to you about the use of observational data at scale in Europe and the problems that we have been solving in the last couple of years. And I'll give you some examples of that as well during my presentation. So just as a background, so I'm leading the Department of Medical Informatics, but we have a very large research line called Health Data Science. And the aim of that research line is to look into improving interoperability of health data. And I'll tell you why. Well, I don't have to explain to you probably how important that is, but I'll show you how we are doing that with OMOP indeed. And the second important topic that we deal with at my department is the creation of analytical pipelines to answer questions on that data. And then finally, we have a team that is really executing the studies at scale to answer questions that matter to patients. And the type of questions we are answering are qualified actually as three different types of questions: more clinical characterization, so more descriptive analysis, so who has diabetes and who takes a certain drug, but also more effect estimation questions, so that's more causal inference, so is one drug better than the other drug or more safe than the other drug? And the third component of research is on patient level prediction, so that's about building prediction models, knowing everything about me, how would my future look like? And with all these three types of questions, we like to leverage the full electronic medical records. And that means not limiting ourselves to a handful of variables, but looking at all parameters, even for prediction, including all parameters or all predictors, potential predictors in the electronic health record. And the focus is really doing that at scale. And with at scale, I mean doing that for many types of questions. So not build custom codes to answer specific questions, but focus on standardization throughout the pipeline. And that means going from source data all the way to reliable evidence, as you see in this image, which I sometimes dream about this image because my whole life at the moment is about going from left to right in a transparent and reproducible way and at a considerable scale in Europe. Now, to do this, we have to work on a couple of very important components to really change the paradigm of being able to execute studies at a much faster speed without losing quality, but still, and doing that across many different problems. So the most important topic is interoperability. Standardization of data is really a requirement to do things at scale, and I'll show you why and how we solve that. Then on the right, you see common analytics. We need to agree on what we mean with creating an incidence plot or building a prediction model. What are the best practices that we want to enforce? We need to create a research memory, meaning that we do not want to repeat things that others have done, like, for example, creating phenotypes for finding patients with diabetes in the databases. Why do many people have to restart that process? We should find a mechanism to store those phenotypes in some library that people can use and apply on their own standardized data. And in the middle is community, which is extremely important to scale up in general, and we've been doing a lot of work in creating a very large community together with many, many people all across the world. And of course, the FAIR principles, which some of my colleagues at my departments have been involved in from the beginning, actually co-authoring the initial paper, is really at the core of everything we do at my department. So making sure we can find what we need, that we can access it, that it's interoperable and reusable. Now, the first component is improving interoperability. And I always like to use this slide, which a colleague of us created, is using the example of an iron, right? So if you go on a holiday, you bring your iron, and then all of a sudden you realize that you cannot use this tool because you have to make an adapter that fits to your socket in the country that you're visiting. And this is a bit the situation that we are still in, at least in many situations. I cannot apply my nice tool in your data because I don't know the structure of your data, and we have to create an adapter to make my tool fit for in your environment. So structure is one thing. We need to really think about avoiding that everybody starts thinking about a new data model when they have data, and everybody thinks they can make the best data model, and therefore we have an unlimited number. And I've been seeing hundreds and hundreds of databases in Europe in my career so far, and I've been amazed into the different types that, like from 2-3 tables up to hundreds of tables in a database, flat formats, long formats, wide formats, anything you can imagine happens. And it's a big issue, at least if we want to scale up. And the second important component of interoperability is really the language that we speak. So we have many different terminologies in Europe, especially in Europe, and therefore we need to come up with some way of standardizing the terminology systems as well and using a standardized vocabulary. And that brings us to the approach that we are taking at scale in my work. That is dividing that pipeline from source to reliable evidence into 2 parts. One is really standardizing the data to a common structure and a common vocabulary, which allows us then to apply a common analytical tool on top of the data across many databases. And in my presentation, I will highlight 3 different projects very briefly. I will talk about Odyssey, which is the basis of all the work that we do. They maintain the common data model and build a lot of nice tools. And then we have the Eden community that's scaling up in Europe. And then finally, if there's time left, I'll talk a bit about the Darwin EU initiative, which is the European Medicines Agency, now leveraging all the work that we have done in the past for answering questions for the regulator, in the regulator in Europe. Now, if we start by looking at Odyssey, stands for Observational Health Data Science and Informatics. That's a very large open science community with its mission to improve health by empowering a community to collaboratively generate the evidence that promotes better health decisions and better care. And what's so nice about this mission, it's really about empowering people, and they've been very successful, and I'm very proud that I'm part of this community and help driving its mission in Europe. A huge number of collaborators all over the world, but also many databases that have been standardized to their data model. And if you look at, if you're interested in publications that are being created by this community, there's a very long list. This is a little bit old slide already, but it's way more than 500 already, with thousands of co-authors, and all of them are available on the odyssey.org website. In Europe, we're scaling up also a lot with Odyssey Europe, the European chapter that Erasmus is leading, and I'm the lead of that, where we organize symposia in Rotterdam. There's another one coming up, the 1st of June and till the 3rd of June at the ship. If you're interested, please visit us. It's free, almost free, that's very cheap. And you can come there and have a couple of courses also on the Saturday and Sunday, and a big symposium. We just closed, just for your to get a little bit of context, we just closed the abstract submission for a symposium like this, and there we had about 130 submissions from abstracts, which actually demonstrates the uptake and interest in using the common data model and all the pipelines that the community has been creating. So there's really a large interest in this work. At the basis is the common data model itself. I have no time at all to go into depth here, because that will take a whole course for a day. What's important to highlight just in this structure is that on the left you have the clinical tables, which host the actual data. It's also so-called patient-centric model, where there's a person table that's linked to the individual tables. But also very important, on the right side, we have the standardized vocabulary. So there are a huge number of vocabularies that are being used in Europe are hosted, and they are linked to one or multiple standard coding systems that we then use for our studies. So, for example, diseases are standardized to SNOMED concepts from all the individual local concepts, local terminologies. And that allows us to run much easier studies by finding all the descendants of a code, so use the hierarchy of the vocabulary, and then the common structure to execute our standardized analytics. Now, the EDEN project is scaling up Odyssey in Europe, and we have a very nice large consortium for that. Its mission is to set up a federated data network in Europe, but not only that, it's not only an informatics project, it's also really about developing evidence and generating evidence on top of that data network. EDEN project is going to end. It's been extended to October 2024, consists of a large number of organizations as any of these European projects. And what's quite unique in EDEN is we had a budget to standardize data in Europe. So we had open calls for data sources to apply, and they could then get funding to standardize their data to the OMP CDM. And that's nicely shown in this picture. At the moment, or we are working with 187 data partners all across Europe. And it's nice to see that we didn't expect initially that it would be so much interest. And you can see on the slide on the top right that there were almost 600 databases that wanted to participate in this, but we didn't have enough funding to pay everybody. And we had to select almost 200 of them to help them go through the whole process of ETLing their data to the OMP Common Data Model at scale. And so this network is almost ready to run studies, and many of the databases have finished their ETL now. That's not the only thing you need to build. So of course you need to standardize data at scale, and this large network gives a lot of opportunities, but you also need to sustain it and have quality control applied, and that has created the idea of certifying small to medium enterprises all across Europe to help with the standardization of the data, to do quality control, and also create their own business model around OMOP. And also for this, there was huge interest. We have 64 SMEs in Europe that we have certified in the EDEN project. Also, many had applied, and there are still requests coming in for organizations to be certified to work with OMOP, which is, I think, very good to see. Now, if we move to a couple of examples of generating evidence at scale, I always like to show you this nice study that was done by one of my PhD students, where we looked at treatment patterns. So what you see here is a so-called sunburst plot. So you have multiple circles. The inner circle is the first line treatment, and then the more you go outside in the circle, you get to the second and third line treatment. And the sizes of those color elements determine how many patients are actually in that cell. So in this case, you see that a huge number of patients in the Netherlands with asthma start on a SABA treatment, the blue one, and then or ICS treatments, and then there are second and third line treatments there. Now, what's nice about this example is it's kind of simple counting orders of treatments. But in the past, if you would like to do this on many databases in Europe or beyond, it would be quite difficult because of the standardization issues. We have now built a treatment patterns package that can be executed across the data network, and that allows us to do studies like this, where we look at all kinds of databases, and this is including Estonian claims data, and Spain, South Korea, United States, the Netherlands. And we look at the different types of patterns and create a large amount of insights by simple counts of orders of treatments. Now, my dream is to do this in the whole of Europe. How nice would it be if you would have the shiny app that you see on the right for all the countries in Europe, and see how we are treating our patient differently, understand that, learn from that, improve our treatment patterns across the countries. a simple example, but always very intuitive because very easy to understand. Another example is disease epidemiology, and this, of course, was a big issue during COVID-19, where we were interested in the background range of special events of special interest, so all kind of different diseases, and we wanted to understand the different the disease epidemiology in different age groups. And here you see an example of a very large study that would not have been possible without standardization, where we had 24 million patients with COVID-19, and I think it was 600 or 700 million patients in the background of this study. And you see here the different the outcomes of the different databases across the different age groups in the different for the different outcomes or different diseases. These type of studies have been influential also in the regulatory space. For prediction, we have done a lot of work. No time to go into depth, but we have been building a framework for patient-level prediction that standardizes all the processes from training the models to validating the models, and that allows us to run studies like you see here, where we train different types of models on the left image, gradient boosting, random forest, and regular regressions. And we do that in different databases. There are 4 big US claim databases on this slide. And each column tells you something about the accuracy of predicting an outcome in a target group. What's nice about these visualizations is that you can easily see which of the outcomes, which is the columns in this heat map, we can predict well across the databases and which we cannot predict in any of the databases. And on the right side, you see development against validation. So here we iterated actually from one database to the other, trained on one and validated on all the others. And you can imagine that this allows us to do validation at a very large scale. And I will not go into depth, but we have a couple of nice publications, if you're interested in that, where we validated some of the COVID-19 models that have been pushed into the public. And we actually showed that they didn't work on many of the databases. And we have some publications on the feasibility of evaluating large-scale, doing a large-scale validation of models. So within the Odyssey framework and the EM framework, we've been working on standardization and building many pipelines and many methodological, or looked at many methods in those 3 categories of characterization, effect estimation, and also prediction. Now, to close up the last 3 minutes of my presentation, I want to briefly mention the Darwin EU initiative, because it really shows the impact that you can have by standardizing your data and participating in a network for the European Medicines Agency. Darwin was initiated through the Big Data Task Force that was set up by EMA. And the aim is to really have a paradigm shift on the use of real-world data for regulatory purposes in the EU. And on the top was a requirement to establish a framework supporting better decision-making throughout the life cycle of the products, to establish a network, so a large federated network, and to execute all the steps for non-interventional studies for EMA on that network, and return these results back to the European Medicines Agency to help them with their decision making. And that's how Darwin EU was created, and there was a tender which I applied to with the team and other organizations, and we were very happy that we are now in the 3rd year of the Darwin EU Coordination Center, where you see on the right its role. It's a bit of the spider in the web. There are committees from the European Medicines Agency that have questions on real-world data. They send that to the Coordination Center. We do a kind of feasibility in the data network, and then send this question through standardized analytics on the common data model to all these different parties, and they return the results, and EMA then incorporates that in their decision-making, which may include other data than only the real-world data. Now, why is this so nice also for me as a medical informatics professor, is that the challenge here is really the scalability. And if you look at this diagram here, you see that the increase in the number of studies is really very large. So we're now in the 3rd year. We're going to run more than 70 studies, but in year 4 and 5, it's going to double again. So, and that is really very large number of studies to execute in a data network, and that can only be done if we improve scalability considerably through standardization of the data. So at the moment we have a data network, about 20 databases, and it's growing quite a bit. This is initial slide, but there are more data coming in. Recently there was a press release where we added 10 databases, as you can see here. And of course the Estonia Biobank is also part of the Darwin network, which is fantastic. We run many different types of studies, incidence, prevalence of diseases, etc. On this network. And if you are interested in some examples of that study, I can point you to the Darwin EU website. There are some links to studies that we've been executed. You see some examples here where they are all recorded in the EU PASS registry, which is the registry that contains all the different studies that the EMA has been requesting. So have a look at that, and you'll learn a lot about the opportunities that this is creating. But just as a closing remarks, we are at 25 minutes. I think improving interoperability really has made a big impact in what we are doing. The whole Darwin project would not have been possible if we have not invested that much in this improvement of interoperability. And it allows us, like my own department with my own database, to collaborate with everybody across the world that's standardized to the same data model. And that pool of databases is growing extremely fast, which is very nice to see. And it's been used now in Darwin EU, which of course fantastic. And I'm sure that the next period will be focusing more on improving the analytics, training of the stakeholders, and execution of studies. If you want to know more about Eden, there are some links here. There's also a QR code, which is my inaugural lecture on scalable evidence, which you may find interesting. It's a nice video of about 45 minutes or so, going in a bit more depth on what I just mentioned to you. And if there are some questions about Darwin, do go to the Darwin EU website, and there are some instructions there also how to ask questions. And Jaak, I want to stop there. I think we're at time now, so.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry I could not attend your inaugural lecture, but I'm happy to see that.
You can.
We can have a couple of questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Estonians now are somehow shy. Anders.
Thank you. That was a great talk, and these are amazing networks. I was just wondering, could you comment on what kind of approaches do you have for anonymization and privacy in your federated approach?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, so this is very important to understand indeed. So in the work that we're doing, we're not sending over any patient-level data to any other organization. So it's really fully federated in the sense that we bring the tools, the iron, as I showed in the beginning, to the databases. So the only thing that's been shared to the coordination center, for example, in Darwin, are aggregated counts. So minimum like 5 people in a cell or so. So that solves some of these or most of these problems actually. So because we're not sharing any patient-level data. Of course, there will still be governance approval be necessary on the local sites. So the process is normally that there's a protocol being written that describes the analysis that's been done, even the analytical tools that are going to be used in some cases. And the governance boards approve that locally to run the study, and then also the data partner will have a look at the results that are being returned to the coordination center. They have to approve that that data set doesn't contain any patient identifiable data. I hope that answers your question.
Riley.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. What was your most valuable lesson so far from the project?
Most valuable lesson? Oh, there are many lessons. Well, there's one that I think that's very important. I remember that we had a meeting a couple of years ago at the EMA before the Darwin project actually was all been set up. And the topic there was which common data model for Europe. And you always end up in the discussion, which model should we use? Should we use this one or that one, or should we stick to this model? And I found it very unproductive to stick into that discussion for a long time. So that's the reason why with my team, we just made this decision, and we're going to pick the data model that we support. We realize that it's not always perfect for any type of use case, but let at least work together to make that model better fit for purpose. And so a good example is there were no cost-related tables initially in the CDM, but because there was interest, there was a use case from somebody and many teams in the end that wanted to do cost analysis, it was decided to expand the model with cost tables. And I think this is a big lesson for me, that we are growing this fast because we have gathered a large number of people that are really interested to collaborate in the same direction and are critical, but also very productive and very engaged to make a change. And I think this is a big lesson that I'm still trying to push also on my own team, that if you want to make a change, you have to collaborate. It's not enough anymore to do it internally in your own organization or even in your own country, however big your country is. You need each other, and this is something that is happening now quite nicely in all kind of different projects that are building on OMOP initiatives, even that we have with Estonia now, to the permit proposal. That's very, very nice to see happening.
Peter, I have a specific question about the Erasmus Medical Center. I know that you have set up ETL process from the hospital information system into OMOP, and it works very fast in seconds or minutes. Can you elaborate a little bit? How do you utilize that within the hospital setting?
Yeah. So there are two databases that I'm playing. So one is the GP database. So this is the IPSI database that has 2.4 million patient records from general practice. In that situation, we have an ETL process that runs about overnight or so. So when we have new data gathered from the different GPs, we run that whole process from executing the ETL, doing the quality control on the ETL, and then pushing it to a research environment. On the Erasmus MC data, we have a process where we map from FHIR to OMOP. That's a nice procedure, a nice process, I should say, because these FHIR endpoints could also be available in other hospitals, which is, by the way, important to realize that FHIR is not by itself a data model. There's still a lot of a common data model. There's still a lot of things you can agree upon and have different implementations of FHIR. But as communication layer, it's extremely valuable. And that's why there's a lot of interaction between OMOP community and the FHIR community to make that link. So at the moment, we're doing it through FHIR, where there is a new data cut, and we do not do this live, Jaak, to be clear. It's sometimes at a quarterly basis or so that we pull the data from the Erasmus University database, and we then apply that process and can transform the data into the common data model and do the whole mapping, and then run all the quality control processes. We are exploring how to use this in the Erasmus MC itself now, so this is an ongoing process. I do notice that whenever I give this presentation to department heads here in my organization, they become very enthusiastic and want to participate and have all kind of ideas of looking at their own data using the tools that I just presented, like those Sunburst plots on their own medicines used in their departments is extremely valuable. So it creates a lot of anxiety, and we need to manage that at the moment a little bit and potentially or definitely scale up considerably to handle all those requests.
Ask.
Thank you. Really, really exciting talk. It was exciting to see that you're able to validate published risk and other models. Then again, as researchers, I think everyone, especially these days, puts a lot of effort into making sure that their data set is representative, large, etc. Have you looked at what's behind the numbers, especially when you're not able to validate? Is it that these smaller data sets are still not representative enough? Oops. Do you have any kind of data gradients that create biases? What's behind it? Why do you need these very large federated analyses for this?
Yeah, so a good question. So there's one publication that we've written that's called "How much data do we need for prediction modeling?" And we actually show there that it's not always necessary to have very big data sets. There's a kind of limit with learning curves. We looked into that. If you can look it up quite easily, I think the publication. And there we show that there's a kind of threshold on the number of patients with the outcomes. So not so much the whole population, but the number of patients with the outcomes. A couple of thousand patients with the outcome is already quite good to run many of the models. And we've run a large-scale analysis on doing all kinds of prediction models on different subsets of the data. And you see very nice plateau there. What we do also see, and that's more like the transfer learning work that some of my staff is doing, where we like to train from one database and use that information also in another database. And there are some advantages there to do that. And you're right that there are still databases that will be small and by themselves will not be able to build a good model, but they may be good to validate the model that's built on another bigger data set. So that's what we are doing. That's one of the color plots that I showed you in the beginning of training on one and validating on the others showed some of those patterns that training on this small database is not going to end up in good models for any of the other databases, but the other way around, it did work. And that's quite important to assess. The other aspects on quality of models is really dependent on which measures you look at, like, of course, all the standard stuff like calibration, etc.
Okay, the last question.
Yep.
Thank you very much for this inspirational talk. And I'm a medical doctor by the background, but have worked many years now in innovative pharma, and I noticed our companies partnering. So I wanted to ask, actually, the scalability is great, but I was intrigued by the vision to make better decisions. And in this context, I wanted to ask, from this network, is Netherlands the most advanced, and how we can learn? Because in Estonia, I think we have wonderful data, but are we using it good enough? And do we make smart decisions? So what could you share? Thank you.
Well, yeah, I don't think the Netherlands has organized everything perfectly yet either. Of course, there's a lot of different types of databases. I do think that the Nordic countries have a very good starting position because of their shared patient identifier across multiple databases. So that is something that's very valuable. I don't know off the top of my head if that's also the case in Estonia, but that's a big advantage because you can link all the databases much better. So that's where we are also struggling with that, and that's going from small to like the European health data space type of level, figuring out what are the best approaches to unlock the data, which I think not really a technical problem, but it's more social technical problem where there's a lot of people who have opinions about their data, which needs a bit of regulation. So I hope that also the European health data space developments that are ongoing now and are kind of finalized to a certain extent would help to push this agenda even further. There's lessons learned, of course, on all kind of different aspects in the whole journey that I can share, but it's probably going a little bit too far for now, but maybe at another moment I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yeah. You're welcome. Enjoy your day, your evening.
We are in the same projects now, so Eden and Team Permit, so it's a long journey, but you have to come here still. Okay,
I'll come.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And next, but not least, Lenne-Triin Kõrgvee, who thought that she would come to the small 10, 15-person seminar. Please, the floor is yours from Oncology Center.
Yes, good afternoon from my side also. I'm Lenne-Triin Kõrgvee. I'm from Tartu University Hospital. And considering the really humbling audience here, I must start with a disclosure that I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a regulator. I'm not scientist basically at all. I'm just a doctor. And I'm a pediatric hemato-oncologist by profession. And so my primary specialty is and competence is to treat kids with cancer. So, but in a way, it makes me the end user of this data-based evidence. And on the other hand, I'm on the very beginning of the data generation, because the data that you all want usually comes from healthcare providers. So it's a strange situation here. What I can do today is only share our experience from the perspective of a healthcare provider who thinks that all these topics that have been discussed today are really important. So my personal journey or data journey started approximately 2 years ago when I became the head of Tartu University Hospital Cancer Center after Dr. Peter Padrik, and which unites the whole cancer care at the university hospital, not only children. And my initial task was to perform quality assessment for OECI accreditation. And just one slide about this OECI, which is the largest European network of cancer centers. And it also provides accreditation activities. And as you can assume, you would need a lot of data to perform accreditation. So at least 350 quality standards and so on. So, of course, we got this accreditation, and I'm happy to say that we are the only hospital in Estonia who has this accreditation. But already during this process, we knew really nicely that we don't have such good, nicely structured, quickly accessible data as we would love to have. And in spite of all visionary talks here, and I believe Estonia is in a very good situation, but if I start to look at what's the situation for me as a doctor, do I have good quality, nicely structured, quickly accessible data, for example, about my cancer patient pathway? When was the diagnosis, the consilium, the treatment, when exactly was the surgery performed, irradiation performed, how many fractions? We don't have it. Of course, there are doctors that are really nicely writing epicracies, but as Raivo also mentioned, it's not always so. And usually the data is here and there. It's within different structural units of our electronic system, also within the hospital. So I would say that also for the primary use of that data, we don't currently have so nice data that we would love to have. And I would say if we don't have the data, you don't have the data for the secondary use. So you can only do research on the data that we have nicely gathered. So this is the situation. So statistical analysis of the quality assessment, it's complicated. So the planning based on this observation of the current situation it's not easy. So patient experience, that is the cornerstone of current value-based medicine. It's not integrated at all. So patients don't have really overview, are they there on their cancer pathway where they should be? So the patients for themselves don't have the overview. And of course, if we are it's not the last. The least, in spite of the fact that it's here the last, it's not possible to do research nicely if you don't have the data. And research, again, is the basis for the upgrading of the current situation that we have. So, considering all the previous, we thought that, well, what should we do now? How can we solve the situation? Can we solve the situation? And we started with the mapping of the data within our hospital, contacted our colleagues from other cancer centers from Estonia, and they had exactly the same problems. We might have even a bit better situation that some of our nice colleagues have. And we also looked around what's happening in Europe. And during this process, we ended up joining international consortium named DigiCore, which is the Digital Institute for Cancer Outcome Research. And that's, I guess, is the reason why I'm here today. because within this consortium we applied for funding and we got it, and within all other partners, and within this call we're planning to build OMOP data warehouse, and to my knowledge we are the only healthcare provider in Estonia with such ambition. We have also plans how to change the situation within our hospital, and it has somehow grown. Maybe it will be even a national ambition now, but I will not talk about it today. I know there are some people who want to know about this, but we can do it afterwards. But about this DG1 and OMOP, shortly, the DG core is quite large already. It's a network of currently 30 cancer centers, and there are 2 commercial partners and 2 networks, and quite large European cancer centers involved. And the primary aim is to accelerate the implementation of precision oncology in Europe based on real-world evidence. So providing tools for the centers to perform digital precision trial screenings, biomarker validations, use of biobanks, and finally to run and perform pragmatic trial based on real-world evidence. So this is the general view. Why is the situation, why do we need this real-world evidence or pragmatic trials in oncology? Because currently, considering the progress in molecular diagnostics, we can basically say that almost every cancer is a different cancer. So we are all dealing with rare diseases, and it's very tricky to perform trials where the numbers are so slow, so we have to do collaboration. So, of course, it makes diagnostics, gives us opportunity and problems. So the cancer care, the treatment has become enormously complex. And that's why we need to look at all these seen somehow differently compared to these clinical trials that we have got used to so far. But I don't think it's an issue considering this audience. But what we learned from this DT core is also the core is maybe not research. This is also important considering the GDPR. But the core and the focus is in care quality and delivery that can be improved in this precision era using digital methods and real-world evidence. And as you can see from the right side, if we comprehensively look at, this is a slide from OSCI, look at the cancer care, it's multi-layer, and research, innovation is as important part of it as any other, because we cannot change the situation without it. So, as we all know, and I don't have to repeat it here, care delivery is the primary use case of data, research is secondary, but if this DG core focused on outcome research, it's in quite many countries considered as a clinical audit, and in this context, somewhere in between, and can be also used or considered or interpreted as the primary use. That makes it, if I finally end up with our experience, maybe a bit more easier. So the project we are participating is the DG1 IT3, which is a collaboration within this DG Core network. Now the first call involved 6 cancer centers, and now the second wave incorporated additional 15 centers. So altogether 21 cancer centers in Europe are are collaborating to make a change, and they are building OMOP data warehouses. And the purpose would be automated outcome research, which is based on real-world evidence. And the initial data set that we are starting is called MEDOC, and I will show you shortly. So we plan to send or export, or ETL, I have lots of new words within this process, all this data to OMOP. So there are some things that have been maybe mentioned by Raivo also and Peter before me, but I think this is the core, this is important, and so it's worth repeating that you have to create value for the clinician, for the quality personnel that are assessing, which is the primary use actually. And you have to, of course, consider all these data safety aspects, but there are possibilities to interpret it so that you don't stop the research. And the important thing is that if we pump our data into OMOP, we own the data. We don't share with it with anyone before there's a clinical trial protocol or trial protocol, ethical committee approval, and then we can release, mainly as has been already mentioned, aggregated data up to 5 pseudonymized. So we don't come down to personal level. And this is the core. If everybody is building the OMOPs that has similarly structured cancer data, and so if a researcher from Estonia, for example, wants to do a research that wants to study something about lung cancer, this is not only anymore Estonia, but it's the whole consortium. It's 21 centers. You write the protocol, you have the ethical committee approval, and then you send out a call for the whole consortium. Please, would you like to join? And they decide. And every center decides, and so they're doing within their MOPS things that Raivo can explain to you much better. And so they release the data. So this is, I think, full privacy by design and federated infrastructure. This is I think, important. And as part of the project, there has been also a survey within this consortium. So what are the really essential or the minimum data items that we should know about cancer patient pathway? And we have decided, and this is now agreed on in Europe, that there are at least 40. They are not site-specific, so they are not related to lung or prostate or brain tumor. They are just the very basic data items that should be known and nicely gathered and structured to all cancer patients to say something. This is the beginning, because we keep in mind the perspective all the time that you can increase the number, you can move to be site-specific. This is definitely needed, but this is in a way a proof of concept to demonstrate that we can do it. And as before me, it was demonstrated that every electronic health record is different. And so, if you remember the plugs there, and you take your data from very different electronic health records and pump them to this OMOP when they are really similar. So basically, you can do it. And as a proof of concept, the experience of these first 6 cancer centers has been recently published in Nature Medicine Comments. And I think based on that, we can say that it works. And just a small list of studies that we have started already last year within this consortium based on this concept. So, and how about our experience? As one of my good colleagues said, that welcome to the real life. It's not as nice and easy as it might seem. So this is just a general slide. As you can see that we are one of these 15 centers that have joined the second call. And within this process, we had to perform self-assessment in a way. So what's the level of our digital maturity of our health record, which is eHealth? And based on self-assessment, we were like silver. But if we had a visit from our colleagues from GT Core, it turned out that we are somewhere in between silver and gold. So we are some elements that we have really nicely and some challenges or opportunities, to put it nicely. So, and of course, just sharing very basic experience, not a high level. If you really want to do something, if you want to change something, and this is not just on paper or vision, but there are the patient, this is the data, this is the hospital, how can we do it? So very challenging has been to find a really common goal for everybody. So for the doctors, for data officers, for lawyers, for IT personnel, for analytic department, for quality personnel, they all need to be involved. So it has been quite a bit of journey, but we have tried to involve everybody from the beginning. And I think it gives the bigger possibility to succeed. It's not easy. There are lots of regulations. I think I have them on the next slide, some of them at least. So, but yes, currently the technical aspects most probably are not going to be the biggest problems or obstacles on the way. I can show you, but it's not also easy. But the data protection and GDPR and whether it's what's the purpose of the use of data? Is it the career improvement? Is it the really research? Can it be considered also as in Estonia clinical audit? Should we try to think about broad informed consent, dynamic informed consent? At what point do we need ethical committee approval? Currently, it seems we need ethical committee approval without having any specific trial, just to build the OMOP. And then second, ethical committee approval if we want to start a specific trial. So does it make sense? If you look at me, I'm a doctor, I'm supposed to treat, and now I'm struggling with all these aspects. So, and these are, I didn't provide it kindly by the Chief Data Officer, all these regulations that we have to follow. And of course, we want to follow them, but it's a question about interpretation. Do we want to be very strict, or do we want to think that we actually need it? And this is also about the technical problems that electronic health record is just one place, but the data lies in very different places. Radiotherapy, chemotherapy, pathology, genetics, how put it together? So, and this is architecture that has been provided. I think I can show you. It doesn't maybe look like this, but it could look like this. So, and if talking about lessons learned, the lessons learned for me, strangely enough, was that I have to keep the focus, my hand on really simple things, like the core things. That if I talk to our data officer, I ask, what do you think is the 5-year survival of an adult oncology patient? What do you think? What's the 5-year survival of oncology patient in general? Anyone? 50%. Yeah, there are a bit different numbers. If I look at the world or Europe or developed countries, there are different numbers. So this is one slide that has been shown. Are we happy with this? Are we happy with this? So what do we have to do to change it? Some cancers, highly aggressive brain tumors, lung cancer, lung is a really huge site. It's a huge problem. So easy. We need data. We need to be able to access and use it. And this is It's strange even to me already now. But this is something that I have to repeat all the time. Why are we doing this? We know we are not happy with the situation. We have to need it. We have to find the ways and to interpret all this regulation. We have to protect. No question about this. But there's a lot of room for interpretation. And so how we in Estonia, in a small country, in Eastern Europe, how we want to do it? Do we want to be open? Do we want to add something to the world maybe? And how can we do it? And this is the question. And we are just in the beginning, and hopefully we can build this OMOP. And this is to answer the question how difficult it is to build OMOP in a real-world setting. And this is not just me, this is the whole group. I wouldn't have been able to do it definitely without them. Jarno, Raid, and Marge Kask are the most important ones here also.
Okay, thank you. Since one of the panelists left the room, you will have time for 1 or 2 questions from Lenne-Triin direct. Peter, Patrick.
Thank you. A very good presentation. And I have no question, but comment that this presentation actually showed very well why secondary data use is necessary. So it's not only for research and development, but actually real lives of real patients are depending from this secondary data analysis. This quality accreditation was good example. Actually, those criteria, they are not simply criteria, but they are clinical criteria chosen according to how diagnostics and treatments are performed. And in that sense, Lenne-Triin, no need for disclaimers, but because clinicians actually are most competent persons saying why you need secondary data use in healthcare. And one more comment that I remember that on the Estonian health insurance, we had such quite big activity where all different disciplines described for Estonia their quality criteria. And every time there was a question that, yes, this is recognized criteria for quality. And always we asked also, is this possible to collect such data? So, so exactly for next developments, we should think exactly that how we can collect secondary data for those purposes. And it's very good to see that Tartu University Hospital is in very good track in this regard.
Thank you, Peter. I would also actually add to that also research ultimately will benefit patients. Its research is not on its own end, oh, let's just count beans, count publications. No, research also will benefit patients. So it's not like only clinicians. But now...
I could just comment on this. One of the core quality standards in USA is percentage of patients that are included in clinical trials. Because it has been demonstrated, it's not only my gut feeling, but it has been demonstrated that it accelerates the access for the patients of innovative treatments and drugs, and during these clinical trials already some patients would benefit. So this is too low in Estonia. We have to increase the number. So this is definitely true.
Okay, with this, I would let's give a big hand of applause. And now we will have panelists. Do not leave. Okay, thank you everybody for presenting. We have one new member, and I would like Sulev Reisberg to tell why you are here and what is your take on the event and the topics that we are discussing. Briefly.
Hello, everyone.
No, it's not on.
knock, knock. Now it's working. Hello, everyone. My name is Sulev Reisberg, and I've been working on health data for more than 15 years. By now, as a software developer, as a software analyst, data analyst, project manager, and also as a researcher for last 7 or 8 years. I did my PhD in personalized medicine, so also the genomics data. And my current work mainly focuses on OMOP, tools, methods, datasets, and I'm also the lead of the Estonian node of Odyssey. And I've really enjoyed today's discussions, and looking forward for the panel discussion.
Yeah, we will talk later more about this Estonian node of Odyssey. I have a couple of questions. We do want to take definitely questions from audience, but and I'm not even sure in which order. Raivo, can you very briefly describe this process that is missing at the moment from the scene? When you bring in specialists from different backgrounds into the same room and come up with a study protocol, how does that actually work, this process, when you have 20 people with different backgrounds and need to come up with a proper study protocol?
Okay, what Jaak is referring to is that once we have the standardized data and tools, then like doing a study is really easy. You just define like what you are studying, and then you press the button, and then you get the results. And that's exactly how easy it is. The hard part is actually to define what you are studying and how. And this is something where like data scientists don't have too much to say on, because usually there are these events called study-a-thons, which are like a few-day workshops where the doctors come in and then they spend like 3 days fighting.
Hold your microphone.
Okay.
Still.
They spend 3 days fighting about like which patients should be included and so on. But like actually it looks ugly, but actually it's a very efficient process, because like the way it's usually done is that like after 3 days we get the working definitions and then we can get the results. But how it's usually done is that the doctors sit in their office, think about it, look in the sky, and then, we should study these types of patients and we should define them like this. Then they send the definition to a statistician, they think about it and say, oh, it doesn't work. And this back and forth goes on for months and months and months. So having standardized data and tools allows to make some processes much quicker. So and also better, because like if you have not one doctor but like 3 doctors from different backgrounds arguing each other, you usually get a better result than one doctor doing this. But this is exactly what this data standardization and tool standardization allows you to do, is when you figure out exactly what you want to study, then you can study it really quickly.
But you do need the data when you are developing the protocol.
Yes, so you can test these like definitions against the data in real time. So that's the huge game changer there.
Jaanika, I have this question. We all, apparently the 2 words that brought people here, AI and health. So AI, in the statistical protocol, you come up, I need this and this, 2 values, and then I do my statistics, right? But in the AI, the promise is that the methods will, well, basically the model will be developed based on the data. You don't know which goes in, which doesn't. This is part of the AI training. But we hear legally that there is this data minimality. What do you actually need? I don't know in the beginning what I actually need, because AI will figure it out. Can you comment on that, having the total amount of data versus very narrow view of the data?
Yes, well, I'm a great fan of AI in healthcare, and I really do believe that it will help to save so much time and expand our capacity so much. Also about, in regards to structuring the data, modeling the data, and so on. So having said that, I think maximum data, but in controlled environment, which means, of course, there should be available as much data as possible, with as raw data as possible. But then again, it should be, of course, be like not just giving out every data and any data somehow, but pulled into this environment when the modeling can be done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Can I take you up on this point? Because over the past 2 or 3 months, I've been going around in Estonian startup companies a lot of them claiming to do AI healthcare. But the reality is, although it's a very, and I think for a lot of us data scientists, it's infuriating how trendy this word is and how much it can kind of capture individual imagination. But the reality is that a lot of the analysis that these, even at the kind of deep tech companies want to do, are not kind of blindly going into database and hoarding data and kind of scavenging. It's actually quite well definable, very similar to standard statistical analysis that we did before 2020. So I think we have to kind of think whether what we need is this kind of, rich data sets that we can, in a secure environment, like do everything with, or is it the kind of the quick and structured and actually a lot of the companies have told me that they don't want to handle individual level data because of the legal implications. They don't want to actually get access to large amounts of data because of the ethics reviews, the code reviews, all of that stuff, right? They have a very simple, quite well-defined question, and you don't need complicated data to answer.
Can I, at this stage, Liisa, do you know what my question to you was?
No, was it the same thing?
What do companies need the most? And you answered that. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Jaanika.
Yeah, but it all depends on technical description. What do you need? What do you want to achieve? What data you need? It's predefined, whether you need big, rich data or you need specified, structured, and clean data. So.
And Lenne, now to you. You spoke there last. But what I want to ask you is, from all the previous presentations, so what did you learn the most new? What is the new thing that you learned? Did you learn anything?
I think the big view is really important to keep you even more focused, to open up some perspectives that you might have not even thought about. Because I think we are not basically thinking about not in the scale that it should be in private-public partnership, for example. We have a lot of data, that a lot of things, a lot of maybe companies would be interested in, but there's definitely the privacy thing. There are basically not a world-changing message so far. Some regulations about European health data space, which is really important. That would be nice and wonderful if we could really build it up. But if I now see the problems on the grassroots level, and we have lots of things in Estonia that the other countries have, but if you want to have the patient phenotype, and how the patient is doing, and this data we don't currently have actually, unless it's in free text, and we have to apply these NLPs and so on, and this is a tricky thing.
We have some technologies for free text as well, and of course in AI, exactly the text analysis has been developing so fast over the couple of years. Let's start to take questions from the audiences. Did you have any hands already? Can we give Vasil a word? Peter, you have been asking a lot of questions. We will come back to you, but let's broaden the horizon.
Thank you. My name is Christian Vasil. Well, I'll ask the question as the chairman of the board of the teaching hospital of the Tartu University Clinic. Jaanika, to you, perhaps. I do find myself in a bit of a conundrum regarding the classification between the primary and secondary data usage. As Lenne showed, the borders are not clear at all. And yet we seem to increasingly fund and draw our attention toward the secondary uses, increasingly now. While the primary use cases, the care, is not at a sufficient quality level. Two questions. Is the division between the primary and secondary use useful to begin with? And can we somehow direct our attention first to get the priority sorted out so that the care is prioritized, and then, because that offers us high quality level data for the secondary use, we can improve our research and whatever follows. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, when I started my presentation, I started with primary data, and meaning that the data should be available in primary use, so it could be available also for the secondary use. And we're currently compiling eHealth strategy, which will be defining definitely also what do we want to achieve by 2035. And I would definitely say that it wouldn't be so much dividing between primary or secondary, it will be more purpose-driven. Which means, for example, that if our goal is to decrease the time of doctors spent on bureaucracy, then it's not a matter of primary, secondary. The course is important, and the course is financed, how to achieve it. Whether it's basically changing some procedures, using AI, making tools available. So I wouldn't say that our decision-making would be or is so much primary or secondary based. We need all the clean data, we need all standardized data. It's needed for wise decision-making, it's needed for the doctors, it's needed for the secondary as well. So I wouldn't be dividing and say that it is important for us to have standards to enter the clean data, but basically to have standards how to enter the data, also by doctors, by healthcare providers and so on, so it would be later available for secondary. So I wouldn't be so divisive. It's just that eHealth data regulation is defining the data labels. This is primary, this is secondary. It's not that we're dividing. It's just regulation, but I think we're purpose-driven rather than the category-driven.
But very brief follow-up. Estonian blockchain-based centralized database does not allow to change or clean or improve the data in the historical data.
Yes, we have challenges with the blockchain in a good way. But Christian, if Christian can add.
No.
Yeah, first of all, I'll
Not another lecture, please.
Okay, I'll try to be short. So I'd say that secondary use is one of the key drivers of data quality in the primary use. Because from the secondary use perspectives, you will see those patterns that are emerging, the problems with data quality that are not apparent in primary use. So I'd say that secondary use of the data, using it for analytics, helps us to see the problems in data quality. But also, there's a driver for new data collection. So when you want to answer some questions from the analytics side and you're seeing that this data is not being collected, then you will have new feedback loops to the primary use. So the primary and secondary use fields, at least in TEHIK, they're working closely together, and we are monitoring data quality from the secondary use perspective, and this is being fed back to the healthcare service providers, their software developers. Hey, fix your software, improve your data quality standards, and so on. So,
Peter.
And before Peter goes, I must add to the obvious point that secondary data use is not data scientists just fiddling with data for fun. The aim of the game is to actually, as Jaanika brought out and also Peter in their presentation, is to provide quality checks, do research, do R&D to make the processes and data handling within hospitals and within primary care better and more efficient too. So,
just one comment from the really practical field. So, if about this primary or secondary, what is in between, as soon as we mention once research, we have absolutely different world. We have absolutely different problems that we have to face. We have lots of ethical commissaries, data officers, so on. And it would be nice discussion to have what is primary, what is in between, what is secondary, because I think they are all the same in a way. So we need to be able to do it all. And as has been shown, the amount of trials are already declining because of the GDPR interpretation in several regions. Do we want that? So how we do it in Estonia? So yes, I think it's a very important issue to address.
Peter.
Yeah, I have such more general question to all panel that maybe 6, 8, 10 years ago, we loved to speak that Estonian eHealth is one of top systems in Europe, at least among 3 ones. Do you see it? Now we heard we speak about European data room and which is good from one side. But from the other side, we are losing our uniqueness and also some advantages compared to others. So can you see currently any advantages for Estonian using eHealth and also secondary health data use? Or if not, then what we should do that we have advantage compared to other Europe and world?
Well, I can start answering from my perspective. As actually Peter Rijnbeek said, that one of the uniquenesses is that we can link several data sets here in Estonia. For instance, this is very much needed in every, I'd say, decent study, that you link some sort of death information, drug information, disease information, and so forth. Currently, here in Estonia, we have all this information and we can link those. Although the drawback is that the information is already split into the several data sets. So the first step actually in research is to link those data sets together, which is a headache perhaps, but at least we can link that kind of data.
Yes, and this is what we're doing currently, actually linking the data sets together, and it is a headache. Thank you for understanding that. But yeah, I still, when we see all the different rankings, Estonian eHealth is still in the very, very top, whereas the Finland and Denmark and Norway really the front runners, which is really nice because we made some historical right decisions. We have centralized database, we're front runner in cross-border services because of that. Having said that, I do believe in secondary data, which means that, yes, it's not oil, but it has a huge potential if it's available in a convenient way for creating new applications, creating new solutions, research and so on. If we also remove the bottlenecks from launching the new applications, if we make it smoother for innovation to be integrated in real life and so on, I do believe in our advantage in having these big data sets, having different data sets, making it available, and very cool startups and innovative universities and so on who could use this data in creating new applications. We pilot to expand it.
Katrin Kaarna, okay. But before you, I want to say that also people whose names I do not know are free to ask questions. But Liisa.
Can I just add to this that the right decisions by Finland, something that was right 10, 20 years ago, like a central database, is not right anymore today. And I think that's our biggest advantage. Today, we heard about the federated approach, and I think one of the biggest advantages is the general infrastructure that we have here in Estonia, the X-road, that actually allows, one thing is to have this database, then the other thing is how do you connect up all of this communication. So we have actually a lot of that infrastructure already in the country. And they going into the data side of things, I think what is very unique in Estonia, there's there's Estonia's population is small, but the information that we have is extremely comprehensive. There's hundreds or thousands, tens of thousands of biobanks in the world, but very few of them can say that they have essentially information from birth to death. And I think that's our really unique advantage here, that we are able to have this linked data for a very varied population.
Timo.
Tere. I'll shortly introduce myself. Dmitro Fishman. I am a group leader here at the Institute of Computer Science. I lead Biomedical Computer Vision Lab, which basically means analyzing imaging, medical imaging. But I'm also here on behalf of my company. So I actually co-founded a startup called Better Medicine. I hope that when Liisa, you mentioned cool startups, you also meant us, because we haven't talked, by the way.
I have talked to someone else from Better Medicine, but not you.
So when you mentioned that companies need very specific short and small data sets, I would say that we would really love to have a big data set of images just poured at us as a shower. But the thing is, currently the system is a little bit built in a way that we are forced into boundaries of ethical committee applications, which don't like to give out data just for fun of it, which makes sense, obviously. But at the same time, from the product development perspective, you would like to have a wider set of possible data points, right? So I was just about to ask, is there any plan for maybe a bit shorter path to data sets like this? Because companies like ourselves would definitely appreciate something that would help us build products a bit easier and faster, avoiding the ethical committees all the time. I mean, for every other data set, we have to really, every other 100 of scans, we have to write a separate ethics committee. And this is going on for like time and time again.
I know privacy is really annoying, isn't it? Human rights as well. But that's the world kind of that we live in. There's no magical solution of being able to conduct research without having to go through the steps. I think the question is about the infrastructure. It's the same thing as, you know, when we developed the COVID vaccine, right? If you think about how long the process of developing vaccine normally is and how quick we were able to do it if we paralyzed the processes, right? If you're able to already, before you start doing your ethical application, have a good overview, what data is available, what sort of power you will have, etc., right? Who can you link up the data with? So this is something that we are working on currently, to be able to make that process not remove obstacles, but to speed up the process. And then again, I think your company is a very good example of you know, high deep tech company, but at the same time, it's quite well defined what sort of data you need, right? It's not that you need to just kind of. Obviously, I think every data scientist's kind of wet dream is to be able to just go unlimited trawling through data and see what patterns you see. But I think a lot of us researchers who have worked with biobank data, it's actually not as nice, because you often, anyway, the good knowledge comes from when we do follow the scientific process.
We also like to talk a lot.
I do,
Katrin,
absolutely.
We need to start wrapping up, and Katrin?
Yeah. Hello to everyone, and I am really presenting here several hats, because on a daily basis, not on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis, I am producing health data by acting like a medical doctor. As addition to that, I am heading clinical research department of Tartu University Hospitals. We have been very closely in this game together with Lenne-Triin already for some time. And as addition to that, I also heard several times this wording like ethical concerns, avoiding ethics committees and so on. I have also to say that I am sitting in several ethics committees, and also I'm heading one of those ethics committees. So from this perspective, I would like to say that I think that it is a very clear line. It does not really matter how we are naming the data, for primary use or for secondary use. It is really changing of the mindset, and in somehow also organizational culture maybe in this aspect how we treat data, because really for that purposes, if we would like to treat our patients better, I'm absolutely convinced that there is that medical doctors need to ask approval from the ethics committee for that purposes. But again, it is different when we are moving close to the, let's say, to the treating patients via clinical research and conducting research. So then it is a different story, and then this ethics committee approval is, let's say, like a mutual part of the process itself. And I also know your concern related to the better medicine issue, because you would like to use data sets of all Estonian people to make some kind of decisions. And I know also that it is a headache for you right now, because again, this is something we probably need also to think how we can be better regulated on a country government level, and somehow also to maybe somehow educate those persons also who are sitting in different ethics committees currently here in Estonia.
Okay,
So,
thank you. I think this was a comment, not a question. Elena?
Yeah, hi. I have a bit of follow-up question for Dima's question. Besides, so right now we are hearing so much about companies, private companies being a part of conversation here as data consumers. Do you see any other roles that private companies can take and contribute to, I don't know, promote the secondary data usage and things like that? Besides only consuming data for developing their products.
I like to talk a lot, so I'll take this question.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. I think that this, what we've been talking about here, this infrastructure is something that will benefit. So none of us are just the users or just the consumers or just the developers. We need to be both, right? We're creating an infrastructure for ourselves, and I think it is vital that private companies such as Nortal, but also private healthcare providers contribute into this process, and then we'll be able to benefit from it too.
Okay, I have one that I know that Jaanika needs to run soon. We need to wrap up this panel. I have one last question to you, Jaanika. What does a perfect, ideal infrastructure for secondary use of health data look like in Estonia in a couple of years' time?
If we have enough money, okay, that matters. Let's pretend we do have. Well, still I think that basically the secure processing environments where we can smoothly integrate or actually put data from different data sources, the data would be cleaned up, the database is linked, and it would be available for any needed modeling, development, and so on. So I would say the future is still in secure processing, but the processes should be smoother in order to put the standardized clean data and as raw as possible in these environments.
Okay, there we got the promise from the government. I need to stop in here, otherwise we cannot consume the unhealthy follow-ups. You wanted to, no, we will stop in here. And thank you. Jaanika, aitäh. 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 Aitäh.